And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session today on enhancing Zoom security. I'm Dave Giberson. I'm a retired instructional design coordinator for online learning pathways at the district. And they've asked me to come back and help out in this unusual time we find ourselves faced with. And it's a treat to get to see some old friends here and make some new ones in these Zoom sessions that we've been doing. The Zoom tool has been just an absolute lifeline for all of us at the district and far beyond. I mean, it was being used in China months ago for this. It, of course, has been available to us for quite some time for free through CCC Confer, but it's kept a great deal of America going. The usage has increased by orders of magnitude, according to Zoom. And whenever something like that happens, it always generates some extra attention for a system. And not all that attention that Zoom has received has been good, of course. The puerile, the bored, and the quite frankly, in many cases demented, have focused on Zoom as a way to entertain themselves and engendering a phenomenon called Zoom bombing, which I'm sure you've all heard of. It's hard to miss mentions of it in the news. It's like most problems of that nature, it's been blown way out of proportion by media coverage, but it is a problem. And I know some of you have probably experienced it. How many of you have actually experienced the Zoom, some sort of disruption in a Zoom meeting? You can just nod your head or type it in the chat tool or just unmute yourself. You can unmute yourselves and talk. That's fine too. I encourage you to do that when you have something to contribute. Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, it's been a fairly rare phenomenon, but the instances of it have gotten a lot of attention because some of them have been rather startling. People sharing pornographic images on meeting screens, spewing unpleasant language, drawing unpleasant pictures on the screen during screen shares and things like that. All of these things have happened. I've always occasionally had somebody start playing in the middle of a meeting and accidentally share their screen when they didn't mean to, and knock me off the screen, or have somebody find the annotation tools and can't resist trying to draw something, but never really thought much about it. There are all sorts of ways in Zoom to control that sort of behavior if you're the host. And I just controlled it and went on and didn't think much about it. But then one day I did get a visit from Professor Hanky Panky in the middle of a Zoom meeting. The prof didn't get off too many syllables before I got him out of the meeting, but it was startling, to say the least. At first, I wasn't sure what was happening. So now, we're sort of primed to look for that sort of thing. But Zoom provides you with all sorts of tools to manage situations like this, both proactively and reactively, and we'll look at it both ways. We'll start with the proactive management. I will say that there are a lot of things you can do to make it less likely that a Zoom bombing will happen. But some of them make it less convenient to use Zoom or harder to use Zoom, particularly for your attendees to get into the meeting. And we risk there throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Uh, the reason that Zoom has been so popular and so successful is that it's very simple to use. It's very easy to join, to start or to join a Zoom meeting. Zoom had deliberately not put a lot of hurdles in your way to accomplish what you want to do in a meeting. And that made it a little bit more vulnerable to misbehavior. But to change that, a lot of the attraction of Zoom, its ease of use, its convenience, its simplicity, to change too much of that to counter what are still very rare occurrences could be counterproductive. So the trick is to try to hit a balance between making yourself too vulnerable and making yourself invulnerable, but making it very difficult for your attendees to benefit from your meetings. So we'll try to, and only you can decide where that balance is. Depends on what you're doing in the meeting, who's attending, and your own personal preferences. So I'm just going to try to show you the tools that you do have available and let you decide where you want to put that needle as far as a balance between security and convenience and ease of use. So let me share my screen. Zoom's superpower, of course, but also one of its vulnerabilities. We'll talk about that in a minute. Because by default, did I not hit that button? Sure. Okay. Just a second. All righty. Let me bring my, always keep a, that didn't react quite the way I thought it would. There we go. That's more like it. Took it a second. Let's go back to the Zoom website here. A useful trick in Zoom is to have another device nearby that is logged into the meeting with you, like your smartphone or a tablet or something, and have that joined to the meeting so you can see when you share screens and so on that what you think you're sharing is what your attendees are seeing. And there was a little delay that time, so I'm now reassured that you are seeing what I think you're seeing. Let's talk first about settings in Zoom, both for meetings and access to Zoom, that allow you to minimize the probability of security issues during the meeting. To set these options in Zoom, you need to be logged into your Zoom account at zoom.us or ccconfer.zoom.us. Actually, those are the same thing. Doesn't really matter which URL you type in or paste in. It's still the main Zoom website that you're going to. And if you're not already logged in, as I am here, what you will see is a sign-in link in the upper right-hand corner where you can sign in. I have a potload of Zoom accounts, so let me pick the right one here. Uh-oh. Seem to be locked down. That's interesting. Let me stop my screen share for a second and re-enable that. Doesn't usually happen. That's more like it. Chrome had locked up there for a second. Don't know why. Sorry. Okay. Once you log into your Zoom account at zoom.us, you have these account screens, account management screens that you can use. By default, you're usually dropped into the Meetings tab. I want to go first to Settings here. And these are things that behaviors you can choose for your Zoom account that will have, many of which will have a bearing on your meeting security. One right off the bat is participants' video. Do you want your participants' video on when they join?
Mm-hmm.
If a participant comes in who's intent on causing disruption, that may be a slight risk. But generally, I like to leave that on, particularly in lieu of certain other options I'll show you down here. People can, this does not preclude, if I turn that off, it doesn't preclude folks turning their video on once they enter the meeting. But I like to encourage people to have their video on at the beginning of the meeting. So, because it makes it more pleasant for me as the presenter. I can go into gallery view and I can see everyone who has their webcam enabled, or has a webcam and has it enabled. And it just makes it easier for me to relate to the folks in the meeting. So,
Dave, I have a question.
Turned on. Go right ahead.
Okay, so this is Badia. I'm eating, that's why I don't have my my video on. But anyway, so you yeah. So if you don't like right here, if you don't turn on the participant video, they can still, you said they can still turn their videos on?
Yeah, they can still turn their video on. This does not prevent them from turning their own video on.
But then why would you, I mean, I'm just curious, why would you turn it off? Why would you not turn it on?
Well, there have been instances, not at the district that I'm aware of, but instances where people have joined meetings and immediately become disruptive. And at least this gives you an instant.
Okay.
You see them coming before their video turns on.
Okay.
But quite frankly, that's never happened to me, and I've done a lot of Zoom meetings. So I don't see any, this is not much of a security risk, but it's something you can control.
But if I have this on, because I have this instant on Tuesday, I believe, yesterday, one of my students, there was some guy was talking, he kept saying not to talk, a family member, and it was too noisy. So can I, in that case, can I turn his video on or not? I mean, off.
Well, there, of course, the issue is the audio. Yes.
I mean,
you can disable the audio. Yes, and we'll look at that here in a second. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
There are also a variety of ways that you can put a password, an authentication process on your meetings, so that people can't access your meeting unless they enter a password which you have provided to them. You can require passwords for new meetings, for scheduled meetings, instant meetings, for your personal meeting room. And Zoom has been turning these options on for people without telling them, which is extremely irritating. I had a session last Friday morning where Zoom had turned a password on for my personal meeting room overnight, and I didn't catch it. I didn't look before I went. I didn't have any reason to look before I went in that morning because I'd checked everything the day before. Everything was fine. There was no password on my personal meeting room. And I fully expected that the folks who wanted to attend that meeting would be able to attend without any need for entering a password or any other impediments to entering the meeting. I was wrong. It took us about half an hour to get the word out to everyone that a password had been applied. And at the time, Zoom had it locked, so I couldn't turn the password off. And I was not real happy with the management at Zoom that day. I'm fairly certain it happened at Zoom and not at CCC Confer, who are the managers for the administrative managers for these free accounts that we get from the state chancellor's office, the Confer Zoom accounts. If I thought that this was coming from Confer Zoom, I'd ditch my Confer Zoom account and I'd pay for a Zoom account of my own. But I'm fairly certain that's not it. Because last thing you need is somebody changing settings when you don't know it that affect the ability of your attendees to get into your meetings. I hope that business is over with now. Zoom has gotten a fair bit of bad press over this, unjustifiably, I think, because they've always provided the tools that you need to control your meetings. But they were reacting in a rather panicked fashion last week, and I don't think they did themselves any favors in the long run, but I'm getting over it. Don't I sound like I'm getting over it? Yeah. So you can turn these on. And if you turn them on, you can then set a password. They give you a suggestion, but you can edit that password and change it to anything you like. Even though I don't have this turned on, I'll show you in a minute, my personal meeting room still has a password on it. So Zoom not only managed to insert a password into my personal meeting room, but it didn't show up that was done here, which made it even harder to deal with and to figure out what was going on at first. So obviously they have ways of circumventing the settings that you set here. Do passwords make your Zoom meetings more secure? Yeah, they do. It makes it, but not by a lot, not by as much as you'd think, because you still have to make that password available to people who might attend your meetings. And in so doing, of course, you might run the possibility that that password may get out. So the increase in meeting security by requiring a password is debatable. And it certainly makes things a bit more of a hassle for your attendees. Though there is something you can do about that, or about minimizing that. You can set this option right here on embed password in meeting link for one-click join. That means that the join URL, your default join URL for, say, your personal meeting room, which is in your profile, has the password embedded in it, encoded within it. That's not the password, obviously. That's a so-called hash string that has the password embedded in it, encoded within it. That's the link that you probably clicked on to get into this meeting today, because I haven't had a chance yet. If I had changed this, if I had taken that password off of this meeting, the link that Mary sent out very hurriedly on starting on Friday might no longer work, would no longer work. This link would then work fine, which she had been publishing before that, my personal join link. But I just didn't feel like I dared start changing things in the middle of in midstream. I think over this weekend, I probably will change that and have Mary notify everyone. I'll test it out and make sure, but this at least you can provide to your attendees, your students or whomever, and then they won't have to actually enter a password when they join your Zoom meeting. The link has the password embedded in it. But that's probably not the link you've been sharing with your students up to this point. So changing things like this can be a little problematic for the first few days. And again, passwording a meeting really doesn't lock it down, because you still got to make that password available, visible to your possible attendees.
Dave, can I ask you another question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. What is the personal ID for? Because that's not the password, right? No.
Your personal, and that's, I'm just about to get to that, as a matter of fact. That's the next kind of topic we're going to have to deal with.
Okay, okay.
In order for your students to join your meeting, of course, they have to have certain information.
Mm-hmm.
They either have to have your meeting ID, which is contained in your meetings tab, if you have meetings scheduled, or if you're using your so-called personal meeting room in your profile. This is my personal meeting ID. So I have to either provide that, and we'll talk more about what the personal meeting ID means in a second, but either I have to provide them with that, or I have to provide them the meeting ID for a scheduled meeting. When you schedule a meeting in Zoom, unless you tell Zoom otherwise, Zoom will generate a random meeting ID, a 12-digit number, I think it is, that uniquely identifies that meeting. Then you have to send that meeting ID to your potential attendees, or a link that contains that meeting ID. And I'll show you that process in a second. And that meeting ID will be different from every other meeting ID that you've ever used, or that anybody else has used, probably. So this raises the specter, the possibility of people trying to use an old link that you sent them in the past to get into your Zoom meeting. And if they do that, you run the risk of having you end up in one meeting room and your attendees in another. And that is literally the only way I've ever seen Zoom completely fail in its function. Because if you're in one room and they're in another, they ain't going to hear you. They're not going to see you. They're not going to get it. They're not going to be able to interact with you.
Mm.
And that happens with some alarming frequency. It's happened to me early on until I learned how to avoid it with certainty. And I know it's happened to a number of people recently. I've gotten a number of emails describing that very event.
So is it better to delete the old ones then?
Well, you can't really control that. I mean, if you send meeting IDs out previously, or meeting links out previously by email or something like that, you don't have control of those anymore. There are a lot of people out there who have my personal meeting link. I've sent it to them. Mary's sent it to them over many months.
Mhm.
It's been out there for years. Well, I don't know. I've been using this account for about the last 8, 9 months. So it's been out there for a while. And people will find that and try to use it. And it does still work, except that they're right this minute, they're prompted for a password when they try to get in. When I put my cell phone into the meeting a few minutes ago, just before we got started, it made me enter a password to get into my own meeting, which slowed down the process somewhat, to say the least. So the question becomes, how can you avoid this? This is the one thing that I really that concerns me about Zoom. I wouldn't say concerns, but that I watch out for, because it's the one thing that might make Zoom fail. If you get Zoom bombed, you can take care of it very quickly, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But if your students end up in the wrong room, that can be a lot harder. Or if they're prompted for a password they don't have, that can absolutely destroy your Zoom meeting. Often enough people have had to reschedule for later in order to sort that out, and there's no reason for that to happen. My strategy for avoiding that is to use what's called your personal meeting room. If you go to the Meetings tab in Zoom, there's a link there labeled Personal Meeting Room. This is basically a Zoom meeting whose access information never changes unless you change it by doing things like requiring a meeting password. This is a Zoom room whose meeting ID never changes, which makes it very easy to provide access information for your students or your colleagues for your Zoom meetings. You don't have a different Zoom meeting ID every time you hold a meeting. So the chances of people not being able to access your meeting go way, way, way down. And it very nearly eliminates the possibility of you ending up in one Zoom room and your attendees in another. And I've used that for years. I've been using Zoom since about 2013 or so. And it's always worked very well for me. That does present some security issues, though, because since it doesn't change, if that meeting ID does get out, which it certainly could, it raises the likelihood a bit that you're going to have somebody enter your meeting who's not supposed to be there and try to become disruptive. Or goodness, or heaven forbid, of course, you can't guard against people who are supposed to be in your meeting becoming disruptive this way, though you can deal with them once they start becoming so. I have had a situation where, after working with a faculty member for a while, it became fairly obvious that the person who was disrupting her meeting was one of her students, because she'd looked through her participant list and there was no one there who wasn't supposed to be there. So we'll talk a little bit about how to
Dave, I have another question.
figure that out. Yes.
I have a lot of questions about Zoom. I mean, I use it every day. I love it, but my knowledge about it is limited, very limited. So how can a person who is not my student, how can they, let's say a friend of one of my students, how can they get onto it? Because I don't have a password. I just send the Zoom to the students.
Right. Well, there's nothing stopping the students from sharing that with someone else.
So how can they share it?
Well, if you okay, we'll talk a little bit more about how you can provide this information to students.
No, how the students can provide this information to others?
Well, if the student has that information, they can share it, depending on how you provide it to.
I don't have a password, I just send it to them.
Well, that wouldn't, the password might not be an issue, because if the students, if someone got your access link for your Zoom meeting, they might also get your password, because you'd have to send them both out at the same time, unless you sent out this personal meeting link that had the password embedded in it. And if you sent that out in an email, say, to your students, they could certainly forward that to someone else or share it with someone else in some other way. So it's unlikely that they would do that, which is why one of the reasons that Zoom bombing is so unusual, relatively unusual.
Thank God I haven't had that problem. But I always click on the schedule a new meeting, not the personal meeting room.
We'll talk about that here in a second, indeed.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
But the personal meeting room is a little bit more vulnerable to someone breaking in. So that's just a risk you take. On the other hand, the risk of you and your students ending up in different rooms is much greater than the risk of having someone invade your meeting, and that will invalidate your students' Zoom experience as well. So I prefer to go with the lesser of two evils, which to me is just to use my personal meeting room access information and provide that to my attendees by a variety of means. Mary sends my join URL, right now this one, out a couple of times a week when she announces the new Zoom seminar. There are new seminars delivered by Zoom for each week. Also, and that's primarily how my meeting access information is disseminated. And that's pretty much limited. That is limited to employees at the district. It's sent out to just about everyone. So there is, it's a large group, but it's probably the reason I've had very little trouble. There have been instances, in most of the instances where there have been spectacular intrusions into Zoom meetings, the meeting hosts have been sharing this kind of access information on public forums like Twitter and Facebook, where anybody in the world literally could see them. Something some people don't understand about Twitter is that when you put something like this on Twitter, information like this on Twitter, it's not just the people who follow you who can see it. Other people can search for keywords in your tweet and bring your tweets up. They're essentially globally public notifications. If someone is looking around for Zoom meetings to intrude into, they can find, if you put it on a public forum like that, they can find it. There are so many Zoom meetings taking place, the chances of them picking your meeting are pretty low, but it's possible, and it has happened. And there have been some spectacular instances of things like people breaking into elementary education meetings with young students and showing beheading videos and things like that they pulled off the dark web. The chances of it happening are very remote, but if it happens, it gets a lot of attention, understandably. So you never want to share this kind of access information on a public forum. So how can you share it safely? Well, email is usually pretty good, but I mean, it's very easy to forward an email. So that makes it a little bit more likely that your meeting access information might get out, either your meeting ID or your meeting link, your personal meeting link, or your random meeting link for your scheduled meeting. An even better solution, if you're dealing with students, is to put your meeting information into Canvas, where only your students can access it. You can post your meeting IDs, or your personal meeting links in a variety of ways in Canvas, of course, just by going, oops, that's not Canvas I want. Sorry.
So are you saying that we can post the Zoom meeting on Canvas?
Of course.
Wow.
You can post any information on Canvas.
Once I learn how to use Canvas.
Okay, and we'll talk about how to do that a little later. Right now, I want to focus on, well, that, of course, that is a security enhancement as well. Let's bring up Canvas here very quickly and take a look at that. In a Canvas course, let me just pick one at random here that I can mess with. In a Canvas module, you can post a link to your Zoom meetings. You can either post a link to a scheduled meeting, or you can post your personal meeting ID here, which is what I've done here. You just do that by, one way to do it is to add an external URL, a web link, to your Canvas course, and paste in your personal meeting URL, or the URL, the join link for your scheduled meeting, whichever you're using. That out of the way. There we go. Here's my current personal meeting link with the password embedded that I haven't gotten rid of yet. Now, I can just paste that into the URL box for the web link or external URL in Canvas and give it a name. Generally better to load it in a new tab or new window and add the item. Now, all my students have to do to access my Zoom meeting, and since this is my personal meeting room link, is to click on that and OK, opening a new window. Click Open Zoom Meetings, and then they go.
Nice.
So there we go. We're back where we were. That makes it very easy for them to get in. And that personal meeting link is protected by being in Canvas.
Much better.
So that's a meeting security. The vast majority of times when Zoom bombing has been a problem, people have shared this kind of contact information way too publicly. It should be shared as widely as it needs to be in order to make it easy for your students to access your colleagues to access your Zoom meetings, but not on globally public forums like Twitter or Facebook or whatever, or sending it out to your entire contact list in email or something like that. That's vastly increasing your risk of having someone try to intrude in your meeting. But if you don't widely advertise your personal meeting ID link or your personal meeting room link, the chances of someone stumbling on it are pretty remote. And using your personal meeting room with its unchanging personal meeting ID, with the exception of a possible password, makes it much less likely that the people you intend to get into the meeting are going to be locked out of it, which is definitely, I think, the greater danger in this case. Because as we'll see in a few minutes, dealing with someone who intrudes in your meeting is just not that difficult, nor does it take very long. These things have happened. The spectacular instances of meeting disruptions in Zoom have primarily involved people who were not hosts who were not familiar with Zoom and had been using it, without really understanding much about the capabilities that the host has in a meeting, and they were unable to protect their meetings once something did happen. We're going to fix that today. You're all going to leave here with those tools that you need. So I like to use my personal meeting room exclusively. Then I know that people should have minimal trouble getting in. There's not going to be a circumstance, very unlikely to be a circumstance, where my attendees are not going to be able to get into my meeting. The alternative, of course, is to schedule meetings in advance through the Zoom scheduling tools, either using the Zoom website or your Confer Zoom integration in Canvas. The Confer Zoom button in Canvas is just an extension, an interface to the Zoom, to the tools that you have available here at the Zoom website. So you're basically doing the same thing either way. To schedule a new meeting, you just click on that button, of course, at the Zoom website under Meetings. You can give it a name and a description. You can, of course, set your timing. Let me set this like to tomorrow because I don't want that interfering with what we're doing right now. You can set duration, which is just a guess. It doesn't mean your meeting's going to end when that time is passed. You can set it up as a recurring meeting if you want to. And the meeting ID can either be your personal meeting ID or it can be generated automatically. If it's generated automatically, it will be a random ID. And I just don't recommend that, but you can do that. Let's just do that in this case. You can decide whether to require a meeting password. If you decide to require that, you can then set what that password is. The only time I really think about using a password is if I'm talking with an individual person, and we may have we may have something to discuss that's confidential, that person wouldn't want shared with the world in the unlikely event that someone else dropped into the meeting. The circumstance I can imagine for that would be a counseling session where you're using Zoom as in a one-on-one counseling session. And in that circumstance, you definitely want to make sure that it's just the counselor and the student in there and no one else. In that event, requiring a meeting password that is given only to the student in question is probably a pretty good idea. So again, if somebody else joined, you'd know it immediately as the host, and you could just stop whatever you're doing and ask the other person nicely to leave. And if they didn't do it, you could throw them out. So even then, I'm not sure a meeting password is really required. As you can tell, I'm just not a big fan of meeting passwords and of providing an extra hurdle for people to get in. It's hard enough to get people to attend a Zoom meeting to start with. And to discourage them in any way by adding to their making it less convenient for them to do so is just counterproductive in my viewpoint. So let's let this meeting generate a meeting ID automatically, and I'll save it. Okay, now if I go to my meetings, I see this scheduled meeting here. You'd also see it in your Confer Zoom app in Canvas. And there's the random meeting ID that's been created. If I want people to be able to get into this, I have to either provide them that meeting ID, or I can go to the meeting itself and I can provide them with the join URL, the join link for that meeting, either by emailing it to them or putting it into a link in Canvas, or however else you might do it, not putting it on Twitter or Facebook. And then they would be able to just click on that link and enter the meeting. But that's a different link every time. The chances are, over time, are almost certain that sooner or later someone is going to try to use an old link for a previous meeting or something like that, and not get into your meeting. So why take that risk? I just like to, and I'm just going to go back and get rid of this meeting because I don't actually want to use that for anything. I can delete that meeting. And when I schedule a meeting or I start a meeting right away, I want it to be in my personal meeting room. I always have that option, as you saw before, to just use my personal meeting ID, personal meeting room. And I just
Dave,
think
where did you go to delete it? I didn't see that.
Oh, there was
How
a
did you
delete
delete
button.
it?
It's gone now, but there was a delete button out to the right of the meeting. It's very, there was a delete button right out here opposite the listing for the meeting. So you can always remove previously scheduled meetings. This brings up another topic about how to set up meetings in Zoom. Do you need to schedule them in advance? Not really. Especially not if you use your personal meeting ID, if you use your personal meeting room. You can just provide a schedule to your students of your Zoom meetings and just tell them, okay, this is when we're meeting. At that time, click on this link and go into my personal meeting room. Ah, wrong one again. Gotta get rid of that tab. That's something else we were working with today. Let's see. Go back to Canvas here. There we are. So you can just put a Zoom class schedule in Canvas. And then also provide a link in your module to your Zoom room. So the student looks at the schedule and a few minutes before that meeting, clicks on this, and then they go. You can even, if you create a Zoom schedule here, you can even embed your Zoom meeting, personal meeting link right in the entry for the calendar. let's say I was going to have a meeting on April 16th at 2 p.m. I can just highlight that, and in the Canvas Rich Content Editor, I can click on the hyperlink or link to URL button, and I can paste, let's see if I still have that, yep, my meeting link in there, insert the link, and now the student doesn't even have to leave this meeting schedule. If I save that, the student can just come in and click on that link right there, and bang, they go in and they go right into my Zoom room. So there are lots of very easy ways to give your students access to your Zoom meetings. And if it's always the same link, the chances of them ending up in the wrong room are near zero. And in this event, I don't have to schedule the meeting in advance. All I have to do is remember that I'm supposed to have a meeting at that time. Which, you know, I've only forgotten that once in the last month. And then all I have to do is go to Zoom, to meetings, to my personal meeting room. And if I'm not already in a meeting, this button here will say, start meeting. And I can just start the meeting and go. And I never had to worry about going in here and scheduling meetings through the Zoom interface. So I just don't bother. I just start the meeting when it's time. And I've already provided the access information to to the people who are likely to want to come into the meeting. So all I have to do is click on the link at the more or less appropriate time and join the meeting. Another thing I try to do in order to make things a little bit more convenient is I like to change a setting. Let's go back to the settings tab for a second, called join before host. I like to set that on. What that means is that I don't have to be in my personal meeting room in order for people to enter it and to talk to one another. Like, you know, unlocking the classroom door a few minutes before class time, so the students can come in and get settled comfortably, talk to one another, maybe share information about the class, or ask each other questions about the homework or something like that. You know, just generally enhance the social interaction between the students or whoever you're meeting with. It's a very nice tool. And you can set that on and allow people to use the meeting before you get there. And it makes it less likely that they're going to leave the meeting if you are a few minutes late. They can be there, they're distracted by talking to one another and so on, and they're not wondering where the heck you are the whole time. Anyway, that's something you can do if you want to make that available for your students. Okay. So don't share, however you start your Zoom meetings, whether you schedule them in advance, whether you use your personal meeting room or you let Zoom create random meeting IDs for you, don't share that information on public forums. And the chances of you being Zoom bombed goes down astronomically. If you want to use your personal meeting room all the time, which I very much do, you can set these two options, these two settings under the settings tab in Zoom to on. Use personal meeting ID when scheduling a meeting, use personal meeting ID when starting an instant meeting. If you set those two on, no matter how you schedule or how you start a Zoom meeting, whether you schedule it in advance or you just start it a few minutes before the beginning of your meeting, Zoom will use your personal meeting room, your personal meeting ID. And if you've disseminated that to your students in advance, then they will, everybody will be together at the beginning of the meeting. And you never have to worry about your students ending up in, well, it's much, much less likely that your students will end up in a different meeting room. So I keep those on all the time. That's why when I do click on schedule a meeting under meetings, the default behavior here under meeting ID is to use my personal meeting ID. I can change that when I'm scheduling a meeting if it's appropriate, but rarely for me is it.
Dave, can you enlarge your screen a little bit? Dave, can you enlarge your screen? Because I can hardly see it.
I can't do that, but you can. If you look at the top of your screen, first off, let me ask, are you on a computer or a smartphone?
On the computer.
On the computer, okay. If you look at the top of your screen, there'll be a little control bar there. And there's a little link in it that says view options.
Yes, I can see it, okay.
You tap on that, you get a little menu, and there's one that says fit to screen. If you do that,
I have a fit to window. That's what I have.
Right, fit to window, excuse me. And that will cause it to fill the window. Then you can full screen the window.
It's just not.
And my screen will be a lot bigger. Did that work?
No, fit to window, no.
That's what, yeah, that's how that would normally work, sorry. And there's no way you can show me exactly what you're seeing either, unfortunately, while Zoom is in operation. But yeah, fit the window, but do full screen the window. I mean, cause the window either expand the window by dragging the corners or clicking and dragging the corners, or clicking on the option or the little, are you on a PC or a Mac?
PC. I can expand
PC.
Your picture. So your picture is, but I can't expand.
Yeah, but you don't, also you can disable side-by-side mode.
Okay.
Uncheck that if you have that set, and that will also make the screen share bigger.
Can I add to?
Of course.
Like when I open it, I say full screen, then my screen is full. But if I say exit full screen, then it will be small.
Okay. Yeah, and once you exit full screen, you still have the option of expanding the window in which you see this by clicking and dragging the corners of it. So you can control it manually that way.
Doesn't allow me.
But going full screen is certainly a reasonable way to do it.
Yeah, I'm in full screen.
And that makes it easy, makes everything easier to see. If you're attending on a mobile device, on a smartphone, say, the things are naturally going to be a lot smaller because of the smaller screen. On the smartphone, you can pinch Zoom while I'm sharing the screen. You can put your fingers, your thumb and your forefinger on the screen and spread them apart, and you can magnify the screen so that you can see things better. And that makes a smartphone a much more viable means of attending a meeting because you can see even fairly small print in the meeting. So that's another technique for that you can share with your students as well. Oops.
So Dave, this is Cynthia, not Doug. I was in a faculty meeting and at the same time, so I had him get on. you were talking about exactly what I need to know, which was when you schedule a meeting, if you use your personal, your personal room, your personal ID, what do you do about a passcode?
Well, you can set one or not, as you prefer.
Do you just make it up or what?
Well, Zoom will suggest one, but you don't have to take the suggestion. If you go to your personal meeting, if you go to your personal meeting room,
right?
and as you can see here, I have a password set.
Okay.
I didn't do that. That just appeared overnight one night for me. Zoom did that for me.
Okay.
But I could get rid of it. I just don't dare right now because the link, my profile link, my personal meeting link is this one that Mary's disseminated, has the password in it.
Okay.
And if I took that password off right now, that link would no longer work. And I wanted you all to be able to get in. So I figured you got the message from Mary on Monday that had this link in it, and I didn't want to mess with it. But I could at any time by going to my meetings tab, going to my personal meeting room, and down at the bottom here is a button that says edit this meeting. I can click that, and now I can either edit that password, or I can just take it off.
Okay.
So you can choose the password, or you can take it off, and then save the meeting change. I don't want to make a change. So
okay, so go back up there now. See where it says required password, and then it says video host participant. Mine goes to off instead of on.
Here.
Yeah.
Host and participant video. That's another thing you can change if you edit the meeting. You can change those.
What does it mean?
It just means that when the meeting is joined, a person can join either with their video on automatically or off automatically.
Oh.
Doesn't mean they can't turn it on and turn it off later. It just sets the initial state when someone enters the meeting.
Okay.
And you can change that. That's also in your settings. Cancel out of that before I change something without meaning to. That's also available in settings. Let's see. A lot of settings.
Yeah, I went through them and did what Mailer said to do. I don't know if that's good or bad. He sent a list of.
It's kind of a personal thing. No, I guess. No. Let's see. No, that is in the meeting settings. But you can set that when you create a meeting. You either set that option in your personal meeting room, or you can set it when you schedule a new meeting right here as well.
Yeah, mine just goes to off if I have a password. I don't have a choice of on.
Well, but you can, when you're scheduling a new meeting, you do have the option. And if the meeting has already been scheduled, let me just schedule one again here, just keep it out of the way. So, and here I have these settings chosen for.
Mine just goes to off. I don't have a choice of on. If I have a password, I don't have a choice of on.
But again, if you schedule the meeting and click My Meeting to edit the meeting.
Okay, I'll try that.
Now you see here, it doesn't appear that I have the capability to change that.
Yeah,
but if I go to the bottom, if I go to the bottom of the screen, I have this edit this meeting button. And you should have that too, because I am using an account just like the Confer Zoom accounts that you have. Mine is a Confer Zoom account.
Where is the
So
edit my meeting?
it is right at the when you when you click into the meeting information,
Yes.
it's at the bottom of the screen, just to the left of the join button, right there.
Let me pull it. Maybe the screen's not. Okay. All right.
And now I have the capability to edit that,
Okay.
just as I do with my personal meeting room.
Dave?
Yes.
I have a question. Do you have to have a Confer Zoom account to be able to schedule a recurrent meeting?
No.
You can
do
use
not.
it with a Zoom, regular Zoom US?
You can do that with a free Zoom meeting as well. But if you are recording, or you can schedule meetings from your free Zoom, or can you?
What I wanted to have the same URL so the students don't get confused.
You can do that, yes. You can use your personal meeting room in a free Zoom account as well. And you can record your meetings in a free Zoom account, but your only option is to record them to your local computer.
Mm-hmm.
You can't record to the Zoom cloud if you have a free Zoom account.
Okay.
But I don't like to do that anyway, so that's not a limitation for me.
Thank you.
Were you able to find the edit this meeting button?
No, but I'm not on my computer, so I don't know. It seems like his screen doesn't come up all the way.
Oh, well, probably you're not logged into your Zoom account.
I'm on Doug's right now.
Yeah, so yeah.
But it should still be there.
It should still be there.
Yeah.
If it's Confer Zoom, yeah, if it's either. So I'm not sure.
Okay, well I'm sure I can find that. I just was more concerned.
That's what you want to look for. Yeah.
Okay.
You do have the capability to edit it.
Okay.
So we've talked about things you can do when setting up your Zoom account, or when scheduling your Zoom meetings, whether you use your personal meeting room or not, and how you can protect that with passwords or not. There are a few more settings I want to talk about before we talk about what to do in case, in spite of everything you can do, someone starts disrupting your meeting. There are a few more general settings, though, in the Settings tab on the Zoom website, with you logged into your Zoom account. A few things that you can do. You can, let's see. You can decide whether to allow meeting participants to chat or not. If you're in a high-risk situation, you might turn that off. I can't imagine doing that in a standard class, though. But one of the disruptions that has occurred in Zoom meetings is people getting into the chat tool and posting nasty messages. You can stop that by turning chat off, but you can also do that dynamically in a meeting. So I really don't recommend turning it off here. But if you're in a high-risk situation, you could do that.
So Dave, that
Also,
would be you're saying the students would be doing that, or
no,
somebody?
it could be one of your students. It could be someone who had joined your meeting without your knowledge as well. Okay. You can, if you want to know immediately that someone has joined your meeting once it's in progress, you can have Zoom play a sound when that happens. And that alerts you to the fact immediately that someone else has joined. People drop in and out of my meetings so consistently or throughout the meeting, though. So I kind of hate to do that because it's distracting. But that will give you a little bit of warning if someone comes in the middle of a meeting and you're not expecting anyone to join late. Okay, let's see. I want to turn that off while I'm thinking about it. That's not neither here nor there. Screen sharing settings are fairly critical. Another common tactic that Zoom bombers have used is to share their screens during a meeting when you are not sharing yours, where you're just talking to your attendees, to your students. Someone can come in and share their screen and have unpleasant pictures on it. Some of the most notorious incidents have involved that. Well, you can fix it so you're the only, by default, you're the only one who can share your screen during a meeting. That does limit you somewhat if you want to have one of your students share their screen with you so they can share something with the group, but you can turn that, you can change that during a meeting. This setting just sets the default behavior in your meetings. Or you can leave it at the default, system default of all participants. But this will lock down your meeting even more securely. And it's not that frequent that someone else besides you as the host is going to be sharing their screen. So you can really set that either way and get by. One thing you want to be really careful about, especially if you allow your participants to share their screens, is you want to make very, very, very sure that you have this setting set to host only, who can start sharing when someone else is sharing. If you leave that at the default of host only, then when you're sharing your screen, like I'm doing right now, there's no possibility of a Zoom bomber coming in and sharing their screen with the meeting, as long as yours is shared. They're locked out in that event.
Good.
And if you happen to be just talking to your meeting attendees and not sharing your screen, and someone else does share their screen, and I've had that happen a few times when people were just playing with the share button and didn't realize they were about to share their screen. If that happens, you can then immediately share your screen, and that will bump them off, bump their screen share off. So you can shut down someone displaying unpleasant images in your meeting almost instantly by sharing your screen and then dealing with it otherwise. So that's a critical setting. That is something, this host only setting under who can start sharing when someone else is sharing is critical. You want to make sure that's set to host only. And that is the default setting. So you don't have to do anything to change. And I'll show you in the meeting, or we'll talk in the meeting tools in here in a minute about how you can see that while you're in a meeting as well. Another thing that is occasionally problematic is annotation. Annotation being your ability to draw on the screen. Like EPA. Excuse me, just a second. Out of there. Like so. That can happen right in the middle of a meeting, or it can be something more artistic and horrifying. And that's something that's normally by default available to participants. You can pretty quickly grab the eraser tool and erase that, but they can get ahead of you too. So you can disable annotation. Let me get that, my annotation tool undone there. But that's occasionally a useful thing for people to be able to do, but it's not something you probably use in every meeting. So you can turn this off for all of your meetings here and prevent that from ever happening. But it's also very easy to turn that on and off during a meeting also. So you don't necessarily have to turn that off everywhere. or in all meetings. Oh, anything else really? Probably
Dave,
that.
is it normally on?
It is normally on, yes.
So I will.
That is the default behavior.
Because we
Dave,
got bombed during the president's meeting last week.
Yeah.
So
Another thing, oh, that did happen? Yeah. Well, I'm going to
Dave,
show you in a minute how to shut that down in the middle of a meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Dave, I apologize.
Yeah.
I have a deaf student, so closed captioning is very important for me. I have a deaf student.
Okay, that's an issue I can deal with during the question and answer period.
Okay.
It's not a security issue, so I'm going to defer that for a minute. But yeah, it's a critical thing, and you can have your Zoom meetings live captioned, and the CCC Confer will pay for it. There's also a feature called the waiting room, which can be enabled. And in fact, for a time was automatically enabled by Zoom, and then they backed off on that. The waiting room is like a vestibule where your attendees go, and then you have to allow them to join the meeting. You have to okay they're joining the meeting. You can either okay everyone at once, or you can okay it by one person at a time. That certainly allows you to vet the people getting into your meeting. If you see a name you don't recognize, not on your roster, you can not allow that person in. But if your meetings are anything like mine, people are joining and leaving all the time. So if I tried enabling the meeting room one time, and I was all during the meeting, I was being distracted by messages popping up saying, so-and-so is in your waiting room. Can they join the meeting? And you have to say yes. And that was just so aggravating. I turned it off just as quickly as I could. It's another one of those things that it adds to your cognitive load, and it throws a hurdle in the way of your students getting into your meetings. So I'm not in favor of it, but that does exist. And it is something you might want to, if you have a reasonably well-ordered meeting and you don't want students joining late, well, then by all means, enable the waiting room and then just ignore the messages as they come up later. But that's not my personal preference, but you get to decide what you want to do. And that's probably everything in these general settings we really need to talk about right now. Though I'll answer questions about any of them later if you have them. So
I have a question about the waiting room.
Yes.
I know you explained that. I'm still not sure about it. Can you explain again what is it good for? Why?
Well, when you have the waiting room enabled, instead of coming directly into the meeting, your attendees, your students, are placed in the waiting room when they click on the link to the meeting or type in the meeting ID or whatever. They can't get immediately into the meeting. They're given a message that says they're in the waiting room and to wait for the host to allow them to enter the meeting. And then you get a message on your screen as the host saying, these people are requesting access to the meeting. Do you want to let them in or do you not?
Oh,
and you have to answer. And that can keep happening at least through the first part of the meeting. I know I've got people joining this meeting late and things like that, and I would constantly be interrupted, having to let them in. And I just choose not to do that. But it does, this allows you to vet the people who are joining your meeting. You won't have anybody coming in, presumably, that you don't recognize once you're sufficiently familiar, of course, with your roster and your class and things like that. So, no, that person's not on my roster. I don't want them in the meeting. You can deny them access. so they never have a chance to get in and cause disruption. But again, the disruptions are so rare and so easily countered that I question the distraction for you as the host is worth it in the long run. But that's a personal decision. You might try it, see how it works. Okay. So I think we've been through the settings that really have much of an impact on security. The one thing I would really, I'll mention again, the one thing you really want to be sure of is this sharing option.
Слушай, давай вечером, когда уже я все закончу. Часов 10 можно или ты? А?
And one of the things you can do also.
Иначе сам присоединяйся ко мне на конференцию, очень интересно.
Я сейчас тогда другим займусь, а мальчишкам своим беру хочу.
That's interesting. What have I done?
Olga's side, I think.
Хорошо, спасибо.
Давай.
Пока.
One of the things you can do is mute everyone whenever something like that happens. And I'll show you that in a minute. All right. And we are back. Be sure of these share settings here. Be sure that who can start sharing when someone else is sharing is set to host only. Be certain of that. Everything else, I think, is pretty optional. So, what can you do then during a meeting if, in spite of all the precautions you've taken, somebody invades your meeting and starts disrupting it? Well, you as the host have quite a few tools that you can make use of. And I can't really show you those tools while we're in a Zoom meeting because, or at least not live, because Zoom doesn't share everything that I see when I control my Zoom menu. That it just doesn't share that with you. So what I've had to do is record myself outside of Zoom with another tool. Record myself going through and illustrating the use of these tools. And I've got those, oops, that's not the one I wanted. I've got those on our, those recordings on our on-demand video site at sdccdolvid.org. And I got to them, I found them by typing in Zoom bomb. Or you could just type Zoom in the search box and look for the Zoom tutorials. And these are fairly recent, so you come on them fairly quickly. But the one I want to share with you first is this one I made on diffusing a Zoom bomb. This is what you could, this will show you what you can do if someone does start disrupting your meeting. So I'm going to play that for you. It's a YouTube video. I'm going to full screen it so you can see it better. Welcome to spring in northern Idaho. We've all heard a lot lately about Zoom bombing, where rogue individuals of one stripe or another invade your Zoom meeting and make noise and maybe even share their screens with unpleasant propaganda on them and so on. And there's been some suggestion that this is some sort of existential problem with Zoom, and it's just not. For one thing, it's exceptionally rare. My Zoom personal meeting room ID has been spread all over the district for weeks and weeks, going out to every faculty and staff member at the district. And I've had this happen once. I had a visit from Professor Hanky Panky in a meeting one day. But it was very easy to deal with it and get that individual out of my meeting very quickly. We've seen guidance from everybody up to and including the FBI about how you can lock your Zoom meetings down so tight that this just can't happen. And what this involves in many cases is making your Zoom meeting so inconvenient to get into that in many cases your attendees just won't bother, and it's just not necessary. There are a few simple things you can do, both before your Zoom meeting and during it, to prevent this from being a major problem without impeding the access of your attendees to your meetings. When you first start your meeting, you can make sure to check advanced sharing options down here in your Zoom menu, just to the right of the share button. Click advanced sharing options. You can set screen sharing to only host. And you can reverse that in the middle of a meeting if you need to, if one of your attendees needs to share their screen. But it's probably not essential. If you do leave all participants the ability to share, though, make sure that this setting, who can start sharing when someone else is sharing, is set to only you, only to the host. This gives you the ability to immediately kill someone else's screen share by just sharing your own screen. This will knock any screen share that they have done off and replace it with yours immediately. Also, you'll probably want to leave one participant can share at a time set. Sorry about that. Okay, so what do you do if someone invades your meeting and starts being disruptive, like this? Well, if this happens, just go to your Manage Participants tool, and as the person is speaking, you'll see in your Participants tool who is talking by the little green indicators in the microphone icon. If they're sharing their screen, you can also see that little blue icon there. First thing you can do is mute everyone and unmute, and do not allow them to unmute themselves by unchecking that box. Now, I can no longer hear them, and I can go in the participants box to their entry, click More, and remove them. Okay, now that person is out of the meeting and cannot re-enter this meeting for the duration. Another disruption that can happen in your meetings is that you may see suddenly random drawings appearing on screens that you are sharing with your participants, or even nasty text appearing up here. You can shut this capability off entirely before starting your meeting by going to your meeting settings at zoom.us and turning the Allow Participants to Use Annotation tools to add information to shared screens off. If you don't want to do that, you can just deal with this on the fly by first going to your share control bar, which will be visible to you but not your participants. And I've got a question. This is me live again. I've got a question in the chat tool asking where were those annotation tools? And they're in this share control bar that you'll have either at the bottom or the top of your screen while you're sharing your screen. So that's where you can get to those tools that will allow you to draw on the screen. And under More, you can disable participant annotation. As a preventative measure, you can also select Show Names of Annotators, so if something like this begins to happen, you will at least know who's doing it right away in the meeting. In any case, once you turn off the annotation capability, you can just open up your own annotation tools as the host and select the eraser and get rid of it very quickly by just mousing over those unwanted intrusions. You can now continue with your Zoom meeting without further interruption, at least from that particular Zoom bomber. Okay, so with just a couple of simple tools, you can very quickly police up most of the things that someone could do to disrupt your meeting. You can mute them almost immediately by going to the participants tool, clicking mute all, and then you can choose whether to let people unmute themselves or not. You might choose not to let them unmute themselves, throw the person out of the meeting, and then unmute everyone. You can do that from the participants tool as well. This just takes a few seconds. And of course, you saw your ability to disable annotation tools on the fly in the middle of a meeting through the participants window. So you can shut down these typical disruptive behaviors very quickly. So that does require you, of course, knowing how to get into the participants tool and knowing where to find it quickly in your menus. And that, or knowing where your, knowing how to use your share control bar that is on your screen as the host when you're sharing your screen. This can take a little presence of mind because these events are always surprising. I mean, you don't expect somebody to crash into your meeting. So it can freeze you for a second. You have to think, oh my God, well, what can I do to get rid of this? Even though you know how to do it, it may take you a second. So Zoom has tried to minimize the time lag that you would have in order to deal with some of these situations. And if I kill my screen share for a second here, if you look in your Zoom menu now, well, actually, no, as a participant, you won't have it. I have to describe this for you because this is a change that Zoom made to the Zoom client after I made those videos. I've got to remake that first one, or the one I showed you, and include this. But now, as the host, you have a link in your Zoom menu just to the left of the participants tool. It's the first link in the Zoom menu to the right of the little camera icon that allows you to turn your video on and off. And it's labeled security. And in that security box, if you click on the security icon, you have the option to disable with one click immediately, right from this tool, disable screen sharing for participants. Also, you have the capability to turn off their ability to all of your participants' ability to use the chat tool, because people have been known to post nasty messages in the chat tool as well. So you can turn that off almost instantly if that starts being a problem. You can also disable people's ability to rename themselves. When someone appears on screen in Zoom, they have a little name associated with their video in the lower left-hand corner of their video window. And people have been known to rename themselves with nasty names. you can eliminate that possibility almost instantly by using this little security option. And there's also immediate access, and they just made this change a couple of days ago, to remove a participant. You can click on remove a participant, and it'll ask you who, and you get another, you get a list of all your participants, and you can just click on remove, and they're gone. And not only are they gone, but they can't get back in. Not in this meeting. It doesn't mean they can't try to break into a future meeting, but they can't get back into this meeting. Zoom blocks their IP address. So you can very quickly manage Zoom meeting security from this new security tab without having, it doesn't give you any capability you didn't have before, but it gives you quicker access to those capabilities. You can also, from this window, lock your meeting, which prevents anybody else from joining, or you can enable the waiting room. And all those are things we've talked about before. But this new security option in your Zoom menu allows you to do this very quickly. You can find these tools very quickly without having to think about, oh, where was that participants window? And deal with things quickly so that it doesn't get out of hand. So Zoom's doing a lot to make it easier for you to manage an interruption, a Zoom bombing, whatever you want to call it. And it's so easy and quick to do it that it's become not a huge worry for any host who knows a little bit about how to manage Zoom security. It is just not a huge deal anymore, especially not if you've been through a training session like this. And Zoom is offering their own training sessions in this as well, as you might imagine. So this meeting will be recorded. You can come back and look at it, or is being recorded. You can come back and look at it at any time. But that pretty much concludes what I had to share with you today. So I'm now going to start taking questions on this and any other topics you might have, though I'd like to start off by dealing with questions about Zoom security. So let me look back in the chat tool here and see if there's anything I have not covered so far that relates to that. Where is the annotation tool I used? You saw that, I think, in that video. Let's see, how do you get out of the student meeting and into my host? Well,
Oh, Dave,
yes.
That's me. And when I got on for class today, I could tell I wasn't in the host because, I mean, I got on, but it didn't say Kathy Harlow host. It just had me listed as a participant.
Right.
And so I went to the other computer and I still couldn't get on as host. What was I doing wrong?
Well, you mean this meeting?
No, my own meeting today.
Oh, your own meeting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Were you logged into Zoom, into your Zoom account before you started the meeting?
Well, here's the problem. I just updated my Mac Air, and I think I got somewhat booted out of things when they updated me. So I need to go back, and where do I go back and make sure that when I go on to Zoom, it'll be me as the host?
You'll be, Zoom will recognize you as the owner of the account that you're using and automatically make you the host.
Right.
The first time you go in, let me share my screen again. First time you go in,
Just
first
so-
go to zoom.us
Okay.
and log in. Sign in as you. And then start the meeting.
Oh, okay. So then start the
And
meeting.
it will know that you're you.
Okay.
If you just go to the Zoom website and say host a meeting without logging in, it assumes you're a free Zoom. It will not allow you to, it won't give you host capability.
So I must
But
have
if you're logged in, you'll be fine.
You think I clicked on the link I gave them? Is that how I got into the
That
student?
may have been, yeah.
Okay.
And if you were not logged into Zoom on your computer, it would drop. And have you enabled join before host?
Yes.
Okay, that's what happened. That's
And
exactly
I was
what
the
happened.
only one there.
You joined the meeting, but Zoom didn't know you were you.
Right.
If you had been logged into your Zoom account before you did that, it would have known you.
They would have known that. Okay, because usually it says host, Kathy Harlow host.
Right, exactly.
Okay. All right, then I have a follow-up question on security. I asked
Good.
the other day, I was asking you, I have two students who are concerned about having the recordings put on the module for privacy privacy reasons. And we were saying that only the students, because it's in Canvas, could access that. But
Correct.
watching today, students can share that with other students.
Yes, they could.
And so there is a security. It's the kind of security and problem we had at City College when we had an auditor who was the boyfriend of someone who got terribly taken care of. So
and that is a possible issue.
yeah. And so I guess I'm not going to do it
But
for that reason.
if that becomes an issue, you can restrict access to that strictly through Canvas by using the Confer Zoom tool in Canvas, the Confer Zoom LTI integration. There, the only way the students can access the recordings is through that tool. You don't have to share the link with them. Of course, the link would come up. I'm not sure if Zoom, when you do that, the Confer Zoom LTI prevents the URL for the meeting showing up.
Right. Yeah.
So I'd have to check that. But the way institutions I've been involved with have handled that in the past is to have a disclaimer up front in the Zoom meeting. Or if back in the days when we had video conferencing classrooms, we'd put a note on the door saying, these meetings will be recorded. By entering this room or by entering this Zoom meeting, you consent to that recording. If you don't wish that to be the case, don't enter. And that got us off the legal hook.
Yeah, but students don't have a choice given what's happened.
Yeah. On the other hand, to have that eliminate the possibility of all the other students seeing the recording, which has tremendous instructional validity or utility. Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give you
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well,
I can tell you, I would tell you, I can tell you what I would do. I would tell them that I'm very sorry, but what you want to do when you enter the Zoom meeting is you keep your video off and you rename yourself so that your name doesn't appear. And then you're not, and in fact, you can do that for them.
Yeah.
And then you're not identified.
Yeah.
And
We
you
have a
will not
lot.
appear in the recording.
That's tough in this class because of the class participation. So this is a course that they are meeting at the exact times their regular courses were meeting.
Right.
And the expectation is that they are there, that, you know, that they don't have to watch a recording because it is the same time.
But the educational value of having that recording is exceptional.
Uh-huh.
And to deny that to the rest of the class,
Yeah.
I would have a problem with, because you could fix it so they would not be visible or identifiable.
Okay. All
And
right.
they could speak without identifying themselves
Uh-huh.
and participate, and they wouldn't have to share their video, and they wouldn't have to have their name appear. That's one of the reasons Zoom gives you that capability to rename an attendee to protect their identity.
I see.
So I would have a real hard time denying the rest of my students access to that recording because of that. As long as I could reasonably protect the student's identity, because I realize people have problems of that nature. I mean, we had occasionally had the female students who were hiding from an abusive spouse.
That's right.
Like
Yeah.
and that obviously we have to respect that, but you can protect their identity and still make that recording available. But that's a really glad you brought that up. That's a fascinating discussion, and it is an issue that could come up in anybody's class.
I wouldn't have even thought of it if it hadn't come up. So
I've always been a bit sensitive to that because I've had students who were being, you know, or who had that issue.
Okay.
So that's fascinating. Thank you for bringing it up.
Sure.
And Allison hit that right on the nose. Thank you. We were great minds, Allison. Allison just posted the exact same answer, much more concisely, I might add, in the chat tool. So great. And that's got me to the bottom of the chat tool. My goodness. How about some more questions? You can unmute yourselves at any time. I'm not, I didn't shut you off.
I have a question, Dave. I put it in the chat, but I applied for a Zoom US account because I couldn't get a conference Zoom. I waited and waited and waited and never received it. So I've been using Zoom US, but that was over a month ago and I still haven't got it. I sent them an email and I still haven't got it.
I tell you what I'd try to do. I'd put through another request. I'd sign up again.
Sign up again?
Yeah. Be sure you use your EDU email address, your district email address.
Could that be the problem that I use the district on the Zoom.us account? I use the district email then.
No, that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
It should work fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd try signing up again, and that may kickstart the process again.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, because those 40-minute time limits can get to be irritating.
Yes. Thank you.
You bet. Anybody else?
I know I have questions.
Great. Because your questions inform everybody else too. You can bet somebody else has the same question, so please go right ahead.
Well, the good news is I got the .cam to work.
Outstanding. Yes.
Yeah, that's the good news.
Yeah, those document cameras with Zoom really add a dimension to your capability to lecture in Zoom that would be sorely missed.
Here's a question about the grade book.
In Canvas.
In Canvas. So I have all these grades out, and And at the end, they give you the average. And I managed to tell it how many to drop of which, category.
If you've set up, if you've set up assignment
I
groups.
set up assignment categories.
Gotcha. Okay, good.
And then some of them, do you have to put 0 into any particular slot where a student has not submitted and no longer has time in order for their average to read correctly, especially
Yes.
if you said to drop certain ones?
Yes.
Okay.
No. If you're dropping, yes, because presumably the 0 would be the lowest grade, and that would get dropped. So yes.
Right. But you have to put the 0 in.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
you do.
All right.
Okay, I didn't even have to go to Zoom to answer that one, or to Canvas to answer that one. Anybody else? And I'll open this up now for any questions that you might have about anything dealing with instructional technology.
I didn't understand exactly how, when I was making up a quiz, I didn't exactly understand how to use the multiple drop downs for questions.
Multiple drop-down questions.
Right.
Okay. I think I've got an example of one of those here. Let me pull it up. Let's see. If I don't, I'll just make another one. But I think I've got an example here. Oh, shucks. Let's just add a question. Of course, I can't do that because this one has been taken. So let me just start another quiz here, rather than have you wait for me to find the one where I've already got one. Okay, I can add a new question.
All right.
And go and select multiple drop downs.
Right.
Okay. All right, here it tells you. Enter your questions specifying where each drop down should go. Then define possible answers for each drop down with one correct answer per drop down. You can't have multiple answer within drop downs. In the box below, every place you want to show an answer box, type a reference word surrounded by brackets. And the reference word, variable name, if you prefer, can have no spaces in it. And
Right, that's where I got lost.
Okay, so let's say, let's use their example. Roses are what color? Well, at this point, I want my students to be able to select a color from a drop-down menu.
All right.
To make that happen, I start with a square bracket, an open square bracket, and then I put a variable name, a reference word in, like color.
All right.
Okay. And then violets are, and now again, I want them to enter a color, or to pick a color out of a list. And I start with another open bracket, but I can't use the word color again because that's my reference word here. That's my variable name. I can't have two variables or two reference words the same. So I have to do something like color 2. Now, when I chose that multiple drop down and I entered these reference words with the brackets around them, Canvas knows that those are stand-ins, if you will, for my drop-down menus that the students are going to see.
Yeah.
When they take the test. And down at the bottom of the question box here, it says show possible answers for, and you've got a little window or a little menu, excuse me. And you open that menu and you've got color and color 2.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for roses, now you enter possible answers for the color of a rose. But there can only be one correct answer. Well, I could say red. And it gives me two possible answers by default. So red, yellow. I can add another answer, white. But wait a minute. All of those are possible correct answers, right?
Good luck
So
finding
I can
one.
add yet another answer, my favorite, all of the above. That's the right answer. So I tell Canvas that's the right answer by clicking just to the left of the word
Yeah, okay.
possible answer there. That's the right answer. So now I've set the possible answers for this variable, for this drop down. So now I'll go to the other one. And violets are not quite so varied as roses, though I'm no horticulturist. Maybe there are violets that are other than purple or blue. So blue, green. Put some things in I'm fairly certain are not correct. Add another answer. Yellow. And I can add more if I needed to, but now I've entered possible answers for my second drop down. Now the question's done, so I just update the question. And that's what it looks like. If I show a little bit more detail, it will show me what answers, what possible answers I've picked for these two. But you still don't see the question the way the students see it.
Yeah, I'm wondering, what will they see?
Well, let's see what they say. I'm going to, let's see, let me go back to the details tab here and make sure I haven't done anything that would prevent a student from seeing this right away. No, don't think so. So I'll save that and I'll publish it to, but I don't think I put it in I didn't put a link to it in. So let me go to my module here and add that to this getting started module, just for the heck of it. Add a quiz. Uh-oh, I got more than one unnamed quiz. That's not gonna fly. Let me go back and name that. Sorry. Oh, I tried to take a shortcut. This is the one I just added, I believe. That's the one I published. So let me go back into it and edit the name. We'll call this example quiz for multiple drop downs. I ought to be able to recognize that. Save that quiz. Now, and it's published, and I've put it in the module. So let's go back to the module and make sure I know which one that is. Actually, I did not add that, did I? Let me add that. Quiz. Why is that showing as unnamed? I'll not save that. Sorry. May have gotten in a hurry. Let me go back and look. Oh, there it is. It's published.
Okay.
Why is it not showing up as an option? Okay. Not sure. Edit. Quiz. Well, that's weird. I do not know why that did not update. That's weird. That's a some kind of because clearly I have saved that. I don't have a good answer for why that's doing that. Well, it looks like a Canvas glitch. Oh, let's see if I can, maybe I'll get lucky. Maybe it's that one. Let me try it. Preview it. Yep, that's the right one. I got lucky. Sorry, I don't know why that did that. Why it won't let me add that to the module. Okay, so now, so it's this quiz at the bottom of this module. So if I go to my student view, that's available, that's published. So my student should be able to see that. There it is.
Okay.
Still don't know why that's not showing up. The student can take the quiz. And here's what it looks like to the student. They get an admonition to select from this menu the answer, what would fill in the blank, roses are blank. They click here, select all the above. Let's say they say green here. And they submit the quiz.
Okay.
See what that looks like?
Yeah, good.
So in the feedback, they see that they got one of them right and one of them wrong. And there were two options, or there were two drop downs. And you
Right.
could have more than two if you wanted to. You could have many drop downs.
Right.
But the question was worth 1 point. I got half of it right and half of it wrong. So Canvas automatically gives them half credit.
Okay, great. And I have one more question about quizzes.
Sure.
I mean, this is my first one writing it online, and for some of my students, they may have never taken a quiz online, and so or a test online. And
Quite
I mean,
likely.
I'm doing a practice when I'm giving them in case there are any problems that show up.
Excellent.
But also, there may be problems that show up that I don't know how to answer. I mean, is there anything that typically becomes a problem for students who are new to this in taking a quiz?
Not a lot, because Canvas, when it displays the questions are fairly how to answer the questions are fairly obvious.
So in the instructions on a given part, I don't need to be real. I could say, answer the following multiple choice questions if they're just multiple choice.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you can say, answer the following multiple choice questions by clicking the box next to the right answer.
All right. That shouldn't be a problem. I just worry about.
But you're doing exactly the right thing to minimize the chance of anybody having a problem, and that's to give them a practice quiz that won't affect their grade,
Right.
but that they can take as many times as they like until they get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
Canvas will then show them how they did on the practice quiz, and if they made a mistake, it'll be obvious what the mistake was, usually. Or at least they can ask you the question in advance. They're not hit with this when they're under stress
Right.
of
Exactly.
having to do something that is going to affect their grade. So you're doing exactly the right thing to give them a practice quiz right off the bat.
Okay, thanks.
My favorite thing was to give them a practice quiz that drew from the same question bank that they were going to see in the real test, and let them take it as many times as they liked, because that's a way to learn.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any question banks, so that's
Okay.
Yeah.
That would make it
that
more
makes that really hard.
difficult.
It's hard enough.
But I had no problem. The student took the test enough to run through all the questions and see all the answers. Well, they learned the material. They may have learned it in an unconventional way, but if they want to spend the time, it can be a great study. A practice test can be a great study aid.
Right.
In the days of paper rather than online tests, I used to run off last semester's test
Mm-hmm.
on the same topic and give it to them, so they'd have a better idea of the sorts of things I was likely to ask. And that helped them focus their studies. They're studying. They knew what I considered was important. And yes, I certainly inflated the grades a little bit by doing that. But I think they actually learned a lot more in the long run, which was the whole point of the exercise. So
Yeah.
that was, that's just a personal preference.
No,
Okay.
yeah, I did the same thing. I already gave them last semester's test, but
Bless your
that was not online. So they need to understand how that goes into this sort of thing.
Oh yeah, they still need the practice, the
Yeah.
online practice test
Yeah.
to show them the mechanics of taking the test and what to look for on the screen. You know, they're just, it'll be much easier for them if they're not doing it for the first time when it really matters.
Okay.
That's great.
All right, thanks, Dave.
You bet.
Can you see me, Dave?
Actually, I am sharing my screen, so I can't right this minute, but I will stop that. And now I can see you.
Okay, look what, so I was in a class with you end of last week, and look what arrived in my mail today. It wasn't supposed to get here.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So now I don't know what to do with it. There's no instructions, but.
Oh no. Okay. Well.
Sorry, Dave.
That's sloppy of IPVO.
It is.
Dave, it's online. All the instructions are online.
Yes, they are.
That.
Perfectly.
And another place where they are is on our on-demand video site.
Yes.
Because you're not the first person that's happened to it. It happened to Vicki too. So I said, I bet it's going to happen to other people. I better put a tutorial on showing you how to use your IPVO software, how to get your IPVO software and use it with your document camera. I can't believe they're shipping those without the software now. I guess it has something to do with the fact that they're pumping them out as fast as they can, and everybody in the world wants one. So I guess they've gotten a bit sloppy as a result. So from a hardware standpoint, all you have to do is plug that into an available USB port on your computer. And you can do that at any time. And it will then be recognized as a webcam by your computer. And you can use it in Zoom and things like that as a webcam. But to really use it effectively as a document camera, you need the IPVO visualizer software, which apparently they're no longer shipping with it. Did it even come with a little piece of paper that told you how to go and get the software?
Nope.
I'm just curious.
Nope.
I see. Oh, that's sloppy. Okay, so let me show you where that tutorial is. Gosh almighty. Oh, so I apologize.
That's okay. I ordered it. It wasn't supposed to get here until like in April or in May.
Oh, wow. Okay, it's worth getting it without the software.
And it came from Amazon, so I was amazed.
Yeah. I wonder if it's Amazon's fault. I don't know. I doubt it. But anyway, so our on-demand video site, again, is, that's not it, is sdccdolvid.org. Let me put that in I don't think I put that in the chat tool yet. Let me put that in there.
I tried to go there today and I got some weird thing.
Whoa. Sound of that. There are the URLs in the chat tool. It's kind of it's not a dictionary word or something like that, so it'd be relatively easy to mistype that. And even just mistyping a URL by one letter will cause it not to work. As I found out to my great chagrin very early in the days of the educational uses of the internet, when Allison will relate to this, I was doing a bibliographic instruction. I was a systems librarian in a small college. And I was doing bibliographic instruction, showing the students how to use the internet. And I mistyped the name, mistyped the URL for the New York Times by one letter. I typed an N instead of an M. And an extremely graphic European porno site came up. So it's easy to do things like that, and the consequences can be entertaining. That was certainly the most exciting bibliographic instruction I ever did. And people remembered everything I said after that. You know? So it's an ill wind that blows no one good. But anyway, hopefully that's coming up, because I'm accessing it the same way here at sdccdolvid.org, not .com or .net or anything like that, but .org. Let me know if you have that happen again. If somebody's hijacking my site out there, I don't want to think about that. But I was at least I'll tell you what, just to be on the safe side, let me try that, go in from scratch, make sure I'm getting to it. Okay. All righty. Now, if you go to, what do I call that? This is IPEVO, your IPEVO document camera. Just search for IPEVO. Here's using the IPEVO visualizer software with your IPEVO document camera. And this will take you through downloading and installing the software. Using the IPEVO visualizer software that works with your IPEVO document camera. Your camera may come with this software on an optical disc, or you may have to download it from the IPEVO website. You can do that at ipevo.com/software. And downloading and installing. Just wanted to make sure I'd put that in there. I thought I remembered doing that. So this will show you how to download this software package and how to install it, and then how to use it with your camera.
Okay.
So hopefully that will get you going, but if you have any other trouble, just email me and let me know. Usually it works quite well. Occasionally, I have seen circumstances where something else running on the computer interferes with the visualizer software. So sometimes you have to, after you install the software, reboot the computer. And then everything usually works.
Okay.
So
and then there's
great.
that camera problem.
Pardon?
And then there's that camera problem I had. Turning.
Oh, right, where it was looking for the wrong camera. Yeah. There is the IPEVO visualizer software will actually work with any camera you have attached to your system. And if you have a different, if in addition to the IPEVO camera, you have a regular webcam, either built into your computer or attached to it, the visualizer software can get confused about which camera it's supposed to be pulling up the images for. Doesn't usually happen, but Kathy had it happen. So to avoid that, because that's not in that tutorial, because it hadn't happened yet when I made that tutorial. I hadn't seen it happen yet. Well, that's interesting. Hadn't done that before. Okay. If an image comes up and it's obviously not coming from your document camera, this is, but if it's obviously not, you can go to this icon here in the upper left-hand corner of your IPEVO visualizer icon menu, and you can select the IPEVO camera. Make sure it's the one selected. One of these is actually my main webcam. See if it'll pull that up. Oh, that's actually an app that allows me to use my smartphone as a camera. It's trying to access that one. Let's see if this is it. No. But then if I go back to and it should be obvious which one's your IPEVO camera. You go back, when you select the right camera, it should show the image. And if it doesn't, let me know, and I'll try to help you troubleshoot beyond that. But I think that will generally take care of that issue.
Great.
Okay. And it's just a wonderful thing. Because anything that camera sees, you can show to your students. And you're limited then only by your imagination. Okay. Anybody else? Oh, wait a minute. Let me see. Closed captions. Yes, I'm sorry. I don't want to forget that. Sorry, Olga. If you need a live closed captions, and I understand why you would, you go to they've made it a little hard to find on their website, so I usually have to go and search for it in Google. Confer Zoom live captioning. Here it is, live closed captions, how to submit a request. I'm going to put this in the chat tool for you, Olga.
Thank you.
You bet. And if you actually use this, I'd be fascinated to hear about your experience with it.
Okay, sure, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There it is. There it is. The URL's in the chat tool, and if you save that, or if for any reason you lose it, just email me. I'll send you the link again. They do require 5 days of advance notice. And oh boy, they've changed this again. Oh no. Oh no. I apologize. That's changed since the last time I looked at this. So the answer now is that you can't get live. I knew that was going to happen with so many people using this. I couldn't imagine that was a sustainable option. So the only thing you can do is check, well, with DSPS and see if they have any way to do this.
Okay. Okay.
Auto transcript.
Dave, you could upload the video to your personal YouTube channel. Don't publish
Well,
it.
yeah.
Have it
That's
closed captioned
right.
and then toss it in.
Exactly. It's always possible to get your recording captioned.
Yeah.
But that doesn't give the hearing impaired student a chance to interact in the live meeting or to in the live meeting. So it's just not the same thing. And this was one of the things, this was the reason that we didn't adopt Zoom for CCC Confer much sooner, because Zoom has been a superior product for years. But they didn't have a means to, we didn't have a process set up to allow CCC Confer, or Tech Connect they call it now, to pay for live captioning. And they finally got that process set up, but now apparently they've run through their funding. So that's a real problem. And here they give a link. Let's see what this link leads us to. Yeah, this is the same thing. When you record to the cloud, to the Zoom cloud, it creates a transcript. It creates captions automatically, but so does YouTube. But again, that doesn't help the student in a live class. I'm sorry. That just quite simply is awful, and I don't know what to say. so they're relaxing requirements in such a way that it's going to harm students, hearing impaired students, or it's not going to give them an equivalent experience. I know the DOE, the U.S. Department of Education, announced some weeks ago that they were, in effect, they announced they were relaxing accessibility requirements in view of the massive increase in the need for online education and people not being able to adapt quickly enough. But that's not great. I'm sorry. Okay. I wish I had a better answer, Olga.
No, you did very good. Yeah, thank you.
At least we know.
Yeah.
I've been, like I say, I've been anticipating that for some time, but I wasn't aware it had already happened. All right. Anything else I can help with?
I have a
On any
question
topic?
about email on Canvas.
Great.
Evidently, I clicked something accidentally that is now having all of my students' emails going to my SDCCD. Because I remember you had originally said, put in a secondary email so that you don't get all, and I mean, do you really even need secondary? Because I always go to Canvas and look at the emails.
No, you don't have to have a secondary email account. The one reason for having your district email account as your primary in Canvas is the use of the Confer Zoom app in the course menu in Canvas. You have to do that in order to use that Confer Zoom app. But you don't have to use that Confer Zoom app either.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing that, you can just take your district email address out of your Canvas profile. And to do that, am I still, no, I'm not sharing. I caught it that time. What are the odds? You go to Canvas. Keep losing my Canvas. Let me put it up here again. Go to your account settings in Canvas and go to your account tools in Canvas and go to the settings link. And your email settings are here in the upper right-hand corner. If you have multiple email addresses listed here, one will be starred as the primary, and the others will should have little trash cans next to them, which means you can just get rid of them. So what I would do, like my default is my district address here, but I could make my Yahoo account the default, and it won't right away let me get rid of this one. That was just my, because changes like this take some time to percolate through Canvas's systems. It's not like our Canvas instance is located on a single server by itself. It's on a server cluster of maybe a dozen servers with other people's Canvas sites, because that's more efficient for Canvas. Actually, Canvas is hosted on Amazon Web Services, so Canvas doesn't even have any control over this. But it takes a while for changes like this to percolate amongst all the servers in that cluster. And so I won't be able to take this one out right away.
Yeah.
But if you come back like tomorrow, there will be a little trash can next to it.
Yeah.
And I can just click that and say, you sure you want to delete it? Yep. And boom, it's gone.
Okay. Yeah.
And then after a certain time lag, Canvas will stop sending email to that account. It won't right away probably, but it will eventually stop sending email to that account.
Okay, so what do you think I clicked, and it might have been on this page, that changed it to sending them once in a while to sending them every day?
That would be in your notification settings,
Oh, okay.
also under your account. You have all these different things that can trigger a notification. If you're not certain about what one is, just mouse over it and it'll tell you. Like if the due date for an assignment changes or is created, in this case, then you could get a notification. You
Okay.
choose whether to get a notification, and if it's an email notification, you can choose to have it to be notified right away with a separate email, or you can tell Canvas, just send me all those notifications in one email at the end of the day or the end of the week. Or you can tell it, don't send it to me. Don't notify me of that event. So probably you went from
I went
no
to a check.
notification to the check mark, which says, send it to me right away. I want to know right now. And I
That's
don't care how
right.
many emails you send me.
And I don't want to know right now.
And when you turn Canvas loose like that, you get lots of notifications. Your email
Okay.
box just fills up.
Yeah, I
So you
think
got to be a little careful about which ones you check here. You want to make sure it's something that's really important before you have Canvas tell you. Because like you say, you're going to go in and look anyway. So you don't need all those notifications. But Canvas can be a chatty little devil. Great questions. Anything else? Great questions today.
I think that does it for me. Thank you, Dave.
Well, always appreciate those.
Dave, what if we can
Everybody
go?
does.
Yeah,
Please.
Dave, yeah. What if we can go to module and we can show again how it's better to use the module?
The Canvas module.
Yeah.
Like in your course. Sure.
Yeah.
Let me show you a course where I've got some modules set up and describe the process, and then let you ask any questions you have. Let's see here. Some of these sandbox courses I'm using are not really set up fully. Okay, this one is. Okay, first off, a module is a collection of links to content, to assessments, and to communication tools.
Mhm.
And the links all have some relationship typically to one another.
Mhm.
Like in this module here, at the beginning of this course, I've put links to information and to activities that students need before they actually start interacting with the course content.
Mhm.
You know, this is first day stuff, the stuff you'd cover first day of class. All of these links apply to that. There's a welcome page, some information about me, syllabus, a link to a discussion forum where they can ask questions without having to be online in real time with me, or send me a separate email. I like to do that in every course, Canvas course, because since it's a discussion forum is visible to everyone, students can ask questions, and about half the time before I see it, one of their peers will have answered the question. And some fair percentage of the time, the answer will even be right. I can go in later and check to see if somebody's answered it incorrectly and try to gently point out the right answer. But that's something that would be needed right from the get-go. And then a quiz on the syllabus. So these are all things that the students would do before they really started working on the subject matter of the course. Then, typically, that's followed by a series of modules that cover, each of which covers some logical subdivision of your course. Like the first chapter in the textbook, or a chapter in the textbook, or a week in the course, or a topic in the course. That's how I've arranged this one, by topic, because this really wasn't a traditional course. It was a flex course for faculty. So I just subdivided it by topic rather than by, and I didn't have a textbook. So it, rather than using chapters or weeks or organizing my modules by chapters or weeks, I just did it by topic. And you might think of other ways to do it. But each module contains a series of links that all are related to a particular part of your course. And the idea is, behind the modules, is that the students should be able to find everything they need in the modules. Ideally, they should almost never have to go over here and click on something in the course menu. If your modules are well enough designed, you could hide every one of these course links except maybe announcements and modules. Everything else could be hidden, and you could have links to anything else they needed in these modules. So all they would have to do to navigate the course would be to go to their modules, start at the top, and work their way down to the bottom. Because presumably you have put these links in the modules in the logical order that they would need them, that you would like them to click on them. So they can just work their way to the bottom of the last module, and when they get there, they're done. They know they're done with the course. So they're never in any doubt about what to do next, which is extremely comforting psychologically to students who are especially taking an online class for the first time. So this removes any ambiguity about how to navigate the course for the students.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think some of my students, it just occurred to me, are going to assignments and they're not looking in the modules.
I guarantee it.
Because they'll say, well, where was that, you know, PowerPoint you put in there? You know, they'll say things to me like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't plant that question, right? You couldn't have illustrated what I was talking about any better if you tried. That's why I usually hide this from students. Hide most everything except announcements and modules, and put links to everything else in the modules, including discussions. Well, they need their grades tool. They need that too. Otherwise, they can't see their grades. But they don't need to see my files. They don't need to see the roster or my pages. I put links to my pages in the modules. Quizzes, same thing. Conferences, that's like a Zoom alternative. You don't want to use it. I hide that one for sure. Outcomes we don't use. The syllabus tool, I put my syllabus as a file in a module. I don't use this syllabus tool. So I just hide all, and they don't see settings anyway. So ideally, they'd see announcements, modules, and grades, and nothing else in the course menu. And everything else would be accessed through the modules. So they're forced to at least see that you posted a PowerPoint presentation for them. That might help them take that test and maybe pass it.
Or do their darn assignment.
Yeah, otherwise I can just go and take all the quizzes. That's another reason why I don't use the syllabus tool as well, because the syllabus tool also shows them all the gradable items in the course. So,
Dave, you just said that you put links on the pages to the module. Can you show it what you just said? So
absolutely. Yeah. So the next question becomes, how do you add links to content and assessments and stuff to the module?
Yes.
Well, of course, you create modules by using this create module or add module button up here at the top. When you create a module, all you have to do is give it a name. So maybe, week 1, week 2, week 3, whatever. You can make your modules before you even start adding content. But once you have your modules made, You can add links to the module by going to the plus sign icon that is in the same line as the name of the module. This affects just this module that's surrounded by white space, okay? So I click that add button and Canvas asks me, well, what do you want to add to the module? And here are my options. I can add assignments. I can add quizzes. I can add content in the form of a file that I upload from my local computer, or a Canvas page that I create on Canvas. Those are your two primary content types in terms of providing them stuff to read or view or look at. I can also create a discussion topic and link that into the module. A text header is allows you to put some extra information into your modules tool. It's not used that much. An external URL would be a web link, a link to something outside of Canvas, like the for hearing impaired students, maybe some of the resources at Gallaudet or something like that. And then an external tool would be something like My Whatever Lab, you know, a publisher's resource. So the ones you're going to use mainly are assignments, quizzes, files, pages, discussions, and external URL. So to add any of those to the assignment, to the module, excuse me, you just click, you select. Let's say I have a file on my local computer that I want to put into this module or put a link to into this module. Well, I can just click File, and Canvas displays for me, since this course is already largely set up, displays for me the files that I have in this course already by file name. But if the file that I want to put into this module is not already loaded onto Canvas, or if it is loaded onto Canvas, I can just click on it and add a link to it. I'm done. But in the more likely event that I'm adding a new file, I just click on New File. And Canvas asks me to, okay, what file do you want to upload? And I click Choose File, and it opens up a file manager box on my in either Windows Explorer or the Finder on the Mac, which one, depending on which.
Can you take it from your desktop, the file?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's my desktop. I don't happen to have any files on that desktop. Oh, yeah, I do. This is a little macabre, but one of before I started doing Zoom meetings all day, every day, one of my volunteer activities up here in Idaho was helping to put up a website for our local cemetery. So I could pick one of these files and open it. Oh, maybe I won't do that, but that's what that came from. So if I choose the file, I can just pick a file that I want to put into my module and click Open, and that tells Canvas which file to use. And then I just add the item. And a link to that does two things. If you do it from the module here, it uploaded the file to my course files, my file manager in this course in Canvas. Basically uploaded the file to my course. And it also put a link to the file into the module. Two things together in one operation by you. So you don't have to upload the file and then put a link into the module in two separate operations. It happens all at one time and you don't worry about it. But anyway, that's obviously a Word document. So now if a student comes and clicks on that, they'll see the Word document very quickly. They can read that. They can download it if they want to, and so on. So that's how you add something to a module. And the process is pretty much exactly the same for any of the other content or assessment types that you might add. If you add an assignment, for instance, if you've already created the assignment previously, you can select the assignment you want to link into the module, or you can add a new assignment. In this case, since there's not a file sitting there with a ready-made name, you have to give the assignment a name, like sample assignment, and add the item. But in this case, this is just an empty assignment. There's nothing in it because you didn't like upload it from your local computer. You're creating it from scratch inside Canvas. So to flesh it out, to make it usable, you have to edit it. You do that by just clicking on its name in the module. That's one way to do it anyway, and clicking edit when you get to the sample, when you get to the assignment page in Canvas. And now you can put in instructions. I don't know, I'm just making it up as I go along. Been a long time since I had that cup of coffee when I started with it. Creativity is definitely waning. You give it a number of points. You tell Canvas how the students are going to turn it in, probably online, probably by uploading a file. You can pick plagiarism review. Yes, please.
You do the grade scheme.
That is done somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
Ask me about that in a minute. You can set due dates and availability dates and so on, and then just save it and publish it. And now that assignment becomes available to students in that module, because I just added it there. So the student comes here and clicks on that link, and then they can submit the assignment. And it's basically the same process if you add anything else to that module. Whether you add pages, that's just a file that you create on Canvas instead of uploading a file that you created on your local computer in Word or something. A page is something you create in Canvas from the Canvas interface. If you do new page, call that sample page, maybe even spell it right, click add item. Again, to actually put content into that page, you have to click on the name, click edit, and then you get this content editor that you can use to create your content. You can type into it, you can put pictures, videos, links to content inside and outside of Canvas, all in here. And create a page and save it.
Dave, so the students can go to the assignments and actually submit assignments from assignments or from module, yes?
Ideally, you would want the student to access the assignment or any other content from within the module, because there it's in context. Presumably, before you put an assignment in the module, you've given them all the information they need to fulfill that assignment by uploading lecture notes, or perhaps reading assignments in the textbook, or links to content out on the web that would inform them, that would give them the information they need to complete this assignment before they actually try the assignment. It's not that they can't jump over all this stuff and click on sample assignment and try to do it right away, but they're less likely to if they can see that you've given them all this information before that they're probably going to need in order to fulfill this assignment, as opposed to having them just be able to go to the assignments link in the course menu and find that assignment. There it is, and just click on it and just, okay, I'm just going to take all the tests and do all the homework, and I'm not going to read any of the textbook, or I'm not going to look at anything that the instructor has posted. You'd think they wouldn't do that. But as Kathy just mentioned, yeah, sometimes some of them will. And anything you can do to make that less likely is beneficial to their educational success. So what can you do? Well, you can hide this assignments link from them. You do that by going to your settings in your course menu. And you find that and go to the navigation tab. Usually it drops you in the course details. But you go to the navigation tab and you see a simulacrum of your course menu. And you just take that assignments button and drag it down below the line here. Now students won't see that.
And if you want to bring it back, you just drag to the previous place, yes?
Right, you can always change your mind and drag it back up. But now students won't see assignments. If I refresh the screen, that change should take effect. And you'll see that assignments not there anymore. I'm sorry, it is there, but it has a little slashed I next to it, which indicates that the students can't see that. You can, but the students can't. And you can still use the assignments tool, and there are things you'd have to use it for, but the students can't see it. So again, ideally, if you've got your modules set up right, all they really need is the home button, announcements, modules, discussions. You can link into the modules. They need their grades, their grades tool, but they don't need to see files. They don't need to see pages. They don't need to see quizzes because those will be linked into the modules. Maybe they do need to see Zoom, but they don't need two of them. And I don't use Confer Zoom, so I'll get rid of that too. And we don't use outcomes at all. So now, if I save those changes, this is more like what a course menu probably should look like. Let me go to student view and show you what it actually looks like to the students. That's a lot less intimidating. And it forces them to find things in the modules, rather than going over here and swanning around trying to find a shortcut.
And you do have to remember to publish the module. I made
that mistake. You do, otherwise you just cut them off at the ankles. Right. Yeah, you'd think that would be easy to remember, but more than once I've forgotten to do that. And I was the system administrator, and I had students emailing me, wait a minute, I can't see that assignment you were talking about in your announcement. Where is it? Wait just a minute, will you? Oh. It can happen to us all.
Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you.
Oh, good. Did I satisfy your
Of course. More than yes, thank you so much.
I'll keep going if I haven't. Okay, very good.
See you next session.
I can't wait. You take care.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Cynthia, not Doug.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I can take care of that.
Oh, you can rename me.
And you can do that as a host too.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Like as we discussed before, if you had students who were uncomfortable about
Yeah,
having their
yeah,
names
yeah.
show up, you can go into gallery view
Okay.
and right click as host and right click on the student's video rectangle. Even if they don't have their video on, you can right click on the rectangle that is displaying their name and you can rename it.
That's good because some students want to be called something else.
Yeah,
You know, I mean,
exactly.
sorry, that's my ring system.
Right.
Someone's in
And
my
they
front
can-
yard.
if you allow it, they can rename themselves as well. Though that is a slight security risk, because, well, not a security risk, but it's a distraction risk because they can rename themselves something salacious, and it probably won't. I mean, we're dealing with college students here. They will have seen worse, certainly. That'd be a real problem with elementary school kids, though most of them probably wouldn't be shocked either if I remember from my days in the cloakroom whispering with my little friends at 7 or 8 years old. But still, it's best not to have that happen. So you can prevent them from renaming themselves.
That's true.
But you can still rename them if they have a concern about and some of them may have a legitimate concern about their name being displayed. So
Okay.
you can take care.
All right. Thanks for everything. I'm
Thank
going
you
to
so
try the
much for
camera out.
everything. Yes, it was such a pleasure listening to all your lectures.
Oh, thank you. You're very sweet. All righty. If nobody else has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and move on. And I will be online. I've actually got the day off tomorrow, but on Friday, we're going to be talking about accessibility in campus courses and online in general. So, and
Well, I learned something every single time. So
Of course, yes.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Well, I do too, because of the good questions. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.